I'm going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the lady in my room who would sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. No one else in my family could see her. She even told me that she was my mom. I really believed her. If you remember, my mom passed away when I was 2. So, it seemed pretty real that it was my mom. I didn't really remember what my mom's face looked like when she passed away. And this lady, could be my mom. She continued to sing me lullabies every single night when I would go to bed. She would always be waiting for me in the window when I would get home from school. But I figured out pretty quickly it wasn't my mom. My mom was a sweet, kind-hearted person. This spirit was evil. She would get mad at me every single time any of my friends would come over. She told me she could see my future and that I was going to go to hell after I died in a car accident. It scared me so much, but no one believed me. It got to the point where I never even wanted to go in the car because I thought I was going to die. She convinced me I was evil. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the lady who used to sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. This spirit was evil, and she started to convince me that I was evil too. She convinced me that I would go to hell because I was a horrible child, even though I wasn't. She convinced me that every single person in my life hated me. She even started to control my dreams, and I would wake up every single night screaming at the top of my lungs from a night terror, and she would be sitting at the end of my bed. This went on for years. When I turned 9, my grandpa passed away. And because it was a really big house, me and my grandma moved to a different house. And the evil spirit was just gone. I never saw her again. But was she really gone? When I was 15, I went to a psychic. The moment I walked into the room, she could feel a dark energy enter the room. She told me that someone was following me every single step I took. And when she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. After that, I went to a medium, and after many sessions with her, the dark presence was finally gone.
This is why you should always lock your doors. A junior in high school was home alone working on a paper while his parents were out to dinner. All night he sits with his back to his door, sitting at his desk with his noise-canceling headphones on. Around 11 o'clock he takes his headphones off at the same time his parents are returning to the house, and he hears his mom from downstairs yell, "Hey Adrian, what happened?" Confused, he runs downstairs and sees right away what she's looking at, muddy footprints all over the rug. He tells her, "I didn't leave my desk." And then they realize someone must have broken in. They look at the footprints and there's none leaving the house. They're worried someone's still in the house, so they run into the garage, terrified, call the police. Police arrive and they don't find anyone in the house, but they do make a chilling discovery upstairs. The police bring them to the kid's bedroom door, which had been left open all night, and they point to the message written on it in Sharpie. This is the actual transcript of what was written on his door, which means for nearly 2 hours, someone stood in this kid's doorway watching him.
Has anyone ever tried to talk to you in a public bathroom? Once a young girl went into a public bathroom and heard from the stall next to hers, "Shall we put on the red vest?" She got scared, ran off, and called the police. 2 officers arrived. One went in and heard the same voice asking, "Shall we put on the red vest?" The officer outside heard her reply, "Okay, put it on." Suddenly, a loud scream, then a thump. The second officer opened the door to check on his partner, then found her head rolling on the ground and blood all the way down her back, making it look like she was wearing a red vest. In Japanese urban legend, the Akamanto is a ghost who haunts bathrooms, specifically female bathrooms. He wears a red cape and hides his face with a white mask. If he chooses you, he will ask you if you want to wear a red vest or a blue vest. If you say red, he will chop your head off. If you say blue, he will grab you by the neck until your face turns blue and you suffocate. If you try to ask for a third color, the floor will open up and a pair of pale hands will reach up and drag you to hell.
This is why you should think twice before putting dolls in your room. When I was about 12, I experienced what I can only describe as an unsettling incident. In my bedroom, I had bookshelves mounted on the wall with various toys and model aeroplanes displayed on them. Also on the shelf were 3 large action figures. One sunny afternoon, I was downstairs when I heard an unbelievably loud crash come from my room upstairs. I ran upstairs thinking there may have been a minor earthquake, but when I got to my room, everything was in place except my 3 action figures. And not just that, but the limbs of all 3 were twisted into grotesque angles which would have been impossible if they'd just fallen off the shelf. One of their heads was even turned completely backwards.
You like taking pictures of your friends and family? One woman took photos of her daughter, but what she saw after the photos were developed was terrifying. So her daughter always dreamt of being a ballerina, until one tragic day when she fell ill. The doctor said that she didn't have long. She quickly lost a lot of energy and soon could barely leave her bed. But one day when her mother came into her room, she was dancing again. Her mother was so happy. She grabbed her film camera and began taking photos, and soon after something horrifying happened. Her daughter's eyes rolled back and she fell on the floor. She was quickly taken to the hospital, where doctors said that she succumbed to her illness because the dancing was too much for her heart to handle. However, when her mother developed the photos that she took earlier just to remember her daughter by, she could not believe what she saw. In every picture, she saw a dark shadow standing behind her daughter, clutching her head and pulling her back and forth. Something in her daughter's room was forcing her to dance.
I feel like a lot of people undermine the importance of mental illnesses, and this is exactly why they should never be taken lightly. Audie Sanchez was a 33-year-old mother of a 3-week-old baby. She had severe mental illnesses but was never given proper care for them. She started to hear voices in her head and became very paranoid. These voices were telling her that she needed to get rid of her baby because the devil was inside of him. Once she started hearing these voices telling her these things, she tried to admit herself into a psychiatric hospital, but they denied her, sent her home with some medication and told her, hey, you're crazy, but you're gonna have to deal with it by yourself. Audie was aware that these thoughts weren't normal. So when she would feel like she might do something bad to her son, she would give him to her sister. But her sister would give him back to Audie after she thought Audie was good again. Although she knew Audie was having thoughts about harming her own son. And she knew about Audie's severe mental illnesses as well. Their whole family did. There were several warning signs, but the baby was never taken out of her care. And this led to a devastating outcome. One night, Audie was staying with her mother and sister after she got in a fight with her baby father. Audie's sister had woken up to some loud screaming. It was Audie screaming after she had cut her son's head off and ate part of his brain.
This is why you should always sit in the back seat. Vivian was spending a year in Korea when something terrifying happened. One night she was going out with her 2 roommates who spoke Korean, and at the end of the night they decided to get a taxi home. Vivian sat in the front and her 2 roommates sat in the back. This would be her first mistake. The driver spoke really good English and began telling jokes. Vivian found them really funny but soon realized that her roommates weren't laughing. In fact, they had a strange expression on their faces. Vivian said what's wrong, but they wouldn't answer. Suddenly one of her roommates said something to the driver in Korean and he pulled over on the side of the road. Vivian knew something was wrong. They weren't anywhere near their apartment, but her roommates got out of the taxi and started walking away quickly. Vivian paid the driver, then got out to follow them. And that's when she found out the truth. Her roommate said, "Did you hear it? It was coming from the trunk of the taxi. A woman's voice saying, 'Help me, help me.'"
This is the creepy story about the red crayon. There was a married couple who just bought a new house. They got it for a cheap price and it was in a very nice neighborhood. They couldn't be happier. One day the husband was walking down the hallway when he spotted a red crayon lying on the floor. The couple did not have children, so the husband wondered where this crayon came from. But he shrugged it off and threw it in the trash. Next day the husband came home from work and saw another red crayon lying in the same exact spot. He was very confused, so he asked his wife about it. The wife then grew pale in the face and said that every day since they moved in here, she found red crayons in the same spot every single day. The husband grew suspicious and started knocking on the walls, and he then heard a hollow sound and began ripping back the wallpaper. Behind the wallpaper, he found a sliding door. The door was nailed shut. He then got a hammer and began prying out the nails. When he opened the door, he was shocked to see a dead little girl in the corner with "Mommy, I'm sorry, let me out," written over and over again on the wall with red crayon.
If you wake up in the middle of the night, don't do what they did. Once there was a girl named Bailey who went to a sleepover at a friend's house. But when her parents went to pick her up the next day, something terrifying happened. So Bailey got home pretty late, ate dinner, and went to bed. But in the middle of the night, Bailey woke her parents up. Her dad asked, "What are you up for? It's so late," struggling to put his glasses on. Then Bailey tugged at his shirt sleeve and said, "Guess how old I'm going to be next month?" "I don't know," her dad said, thinking this was some kind of joke. "How old?" Bailey smiled and held up 4 fingers. It's about 7 in the morning now, and Bailey's parents have been awake for almost 8 hours. Still, Bailey refuses to tell her parents where she got them from. Follow for more stories.
One day, my mom was staying at her aunt's house, which is haunted because that's where her uncle had died. So one night, she was staying in the room that her uncle happened to pass away in. When she fell asleep, she said she felt something heavy at the edge of the bed. She said it weighed so much she couldn't even move her legs. Once she opened her eyes, she saw a tall man with a hat in the corner of her bedroom.